In the world of medical technology, we see these brilliant innovations that could literally save lives. But here's the strange part, the paradox. Most MedTech startups don't actually fail because their tech isn't good enough. Nope. They fail because they get completely lost on the road to market. So today, we're putting together a survival guide for that exact journey.
This quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures this huge misunderstanding. For so many founders, getting that regulatory green light feels like the victory lap. But in reality, it's just the starting gun. It's permission to finally start the real race. The challenges of getting paid, getting doctors to actually use it, and building a business that lasts. All of that is still ahead.
And even just getting to that starting line takes way longer than most people expect. We're talking a year, maybe a year and a half longer than what was on the plan. Now that's not just a small hiccup. For a startup burning through cash, a delay like that can be a fatal blow. And this isn't some rare thing. Underestimating the timeline by 12 to 18 months is a dangerously common mistake. So, to help you navigate this whole minefield, we've laid out this explainer to be your map. We're going to start with the starting gun to really get the first principles down. Then, we'll get into proving your claims with the right paperwork, talk about the success triangle, build your quality playbook, and finally, pull it all together with the integrated path forward. Okay, let's dive right in with the most critical point of all. A good idea only becomes a real, viable medical device when the regulatory side of things is baked into its DNA right from the very beginning. Your innovation on its own, it's just not enough.
Everything, and I really mean everything, in the regulatory world starts with this one concept, the intended use. Now, this isn't your marketing copy. It's a super precise, almost legal statement that defines exactly what your device does, who it's for, and where it's used. Get this part right, and you've got a solid foundation. But if you get it wrong, the whole house of cards can come tumbling down.
This slide is such a perfect example. On the left, you see an app for heart rate monitoring. Sounds great for a website, right? But to a regulator, it's dangerously vague. They might read that and think you're making a diagnostic claim, and poof, you've just triggered a mountain of new requirements. Now look at the statement on the right. It is crystal clear. It spells out the condition, the patient, the setting, and the function. That's the level of clarity regulators need to see.
So here's the bottom line. Your intended use statement is the first domino. It directly decides your device's risk classification. And that classification determines how much clinical evidence and testing you're going to have to do. A single wrong word here can start a chain reaction of problems and delays down the road.
For example, there was this one startup with a cool respiratory analysis system. They were convinced it was a low-risk, Class 1 device. But when they sent it over to the FDA, the regulator saw it totally differently. That misclassification forced them to go all the way back to the drawing board to do brand new risk analyses and collect more clinical data. You can just imagine the time and money that cost them.
Okay, so your intended use sets the stage. But once you've defined what your device does, you have to prove it. You have to prove it works safely and effectively. And that brings us to the next massive hurdle, documentation. This right here is the mantra every single medtech startup needs to live and breathe. Regulators, they operate on hard evidence. Your amazing test results, those brilliant design meetings, your risk assessments, if they are not meticulously documented, then in their eyes, they simply do not exist. It's that black and white.
And this is the question that keeps founders staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., right? Because a single missing document can get your submission bounced right back to the end of the line, wasting months of your time. So what are the things people usually forget? This list shows you all the common tripwires. And these aren't just bureaucratic checkboxes, you know? Each one tells a vital part of your device's story. A weak clinical evaluation report fails to prove your device is safe. An incomplete risk management file basically screams that you haven't thought enough about patient safety. And missing software documentation? For any digital health product, that's a massive red flag. These gaps don't just cause delays, they kill a reviewer's confidence in your whole company.
And just to make things a little more complicated, the rules are different depending on where you are in the world. I mean, take the case of a company with a gate stabilization system. They got their FDA approval in the US, but when they took that exact same data to Europe for a CE mark, their application was rejected. The evidence just didn't cut it for the EU's specific rules, leading to months of expensive delays and rework.
So you've defined your product, you've documented all your claims, but getting that regulatory approval is just one corner of the puzzle. This brings us to what is really the core idea of this entire explainer, the success triangle. These are the 3 pillars of any successful MedTech company: getting regulatory approval, securing funding, and making sure you actually get paid for your device, which is reimbursement. And the critical insight, the thing you have to remember, is that these are not steps you do one after the other. You can't just conquer them one by one. You have to manage them as a single, interconnected strategy from day one.
This is the fatal flaw. It's when your regulatory team isn't talking to your reimbursement team, and neither of them is on the same page as your fundraising plan. That's when you create these huge strategic gaps. For instance, you might get a device approved, but the claims are so narrow that no insurance company is ever going to pay for it. And what's the result? A perfectly good, government-approved device that can't find a single buyer.
But when you integrate these strategies, you can make some really smart moves. I heard about a company developing a diagnostic device for eye disease. At first, they were aiming for this super complex, expensive regulatory path. But by getting all 3 pillars, regulatory, funding, and reimbursement in the same room, they found a much simpler initial claim. This let them get to market way faster as a Class 1 device, start making money, and use that real-world data to build a case for bigger claims down the road. That's a classic crawl, walk, run success story.
That integrated crawl, walk, run strategy is incredibly powerful. But what's the engine that actually drives it every day? Well, that's your quality playbook, and it's built around something called a quality management system.
A QMS isn't just a big binder of procedures you put together to make an auditor happy. Think of it more like your company's operating system. It's the formal system that ensures you design, test, and build your device correctly and consistently, every single time. It turns quality from just a checkbox into a real strategic advantage.
And the really crucial part is to put it in place early. A right-sized QMS, one that's lean and tailored to where your startup is right now, locks in your design choices and user needs before you spend a fortune on development and testing. This kind of discipline prevents incredibly expensive rework later on.
Now, building a QMS can feel like a huge task, but it really breaks down into 4 clear steps. First, you do a gap assessment to see where you are versus where you need to be. Second, you develop lean, clear procedures for how your company operates. Third, you create one single, controlled system for all your documents. And finally, you get ready to be audited. This structured approach makes a really daunting task totally manageable.
And this brings us to the final takeaway. We've seen that navigating the path from a brilliant idea to a successful medical device requires a totally new mindset. It's all about shifting from a linear, siloed process to one that is fully integrated from the very start.
Let's end by completely reframing this whole topic. Far too many startups see regulatory compliance as this mandatory headache, right? A cost center you try to minimize. But the most successful companies, they do the exact opposite. They turn it into their secret weapon. A smart regulatory strategy de-risks the entire venture. It builds investor confidence, and ultimately, it becomes a powerful competitive advantage out there in the market.
At the end of the day, bringing a medical device to market is a marathon, not a sprint. And it's a marathon that you have to run through a minefield. Innovation will get you to the starting line, but survival and success, that depends on having the right map. So the question is, do you have yours?